Hi, Mr. Detweiler. Dr. Newman here. You have a...
You have a volume that you cannot hear.
This?
Yes.
Oh, it's actually plenty loud.
Okay, so good. Let me just see. Welcome to Cafe Latino. As every week, we have amazing people who visit us, and today is no exception. Supervisor Cook is with us, and we will share so much stuff about what is happening here in Northern Virginia. Welcome.
Thank you, Laura. It's a pleasure to be here on the show again. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, so many years ago we were here together, and now we again. So just to remind the people, can you tell us a little about you? So where did you born? What did you study? A little about yourself.
Sure. So I currently represent the Braddock District on the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, where I've been for the last 10 years. I grew up in a small town in the Catskill Mountains, upstate New York. Went to college in Gettysburg College, went to law school at George Washington, and then moved across the river to Virginia. Have had law practice for some time, and then was becoming involved in my community, was president of my civic association, served on my PTA, coaching recreational sports, doing the things that a lot of engaged people do in Fairfax. Then had the opportunity to run for the Board of Supervisors, and it's been a great honor to serve for 10 years.
That's wonderful. And along these years, you have accomplished a lot of stuff, I know. Can you share the most important things that you feel that you've been accomplished as a supervisor?
Thanks, Laura. I am proud of many of the things that we've been able to do. I think in my district, I've been known for being open, transparent, informing the community about what's going on in the county, and soliciting community input, encouraging community engagement. I think it's very important for people to understand what's happening in local government, what's happening in the local community, and to understand that we can have an effect on our community. We working together, we can do good things to make our communities even better. And so I've had that philosophy as sort of the foundation of everything I've done, and I think that's important in our county. And so when we've gotten to some of the more difficult policy issues that I've been able to work on, that's been important. Been very involved in our diversion first efforts in the county. That is our effort to have people who have run into problems with the law because of a mental health challenge or developmental disability. Instead of arresting them, putting them in jail, which is not only very expensive but is counterproductive, it makes the problem worse. Instead, we need treatment and training for folks, and that's what our program does. And we've gone from 5 years ago where we had we had a tragic death in our jail. We had no program, to now being a national leader, one of a couple dozen places in the country that is really leading on our efforts. So I'm very, very proud of that effort to help people, especially those with mental health challenges, making great strides there. And that's part of a broader effort at law enforcement reform, police reform, criminal justice reform. And I've been able to help lead those efforts as chair of the board's public safety committee. We want our police department and our communities to work together. We want people to have confidence in our police. We have a great police force, but that strength comes from community support. And so we want the community and our police to work together. And that part of that confidence building is some civilian oversight of police and some adjustment in policies. We've done a lot of training to help our police understand mental health, understand developmental disabilities. So many of our 911 calls turn out to be people who are having a mental health challenge.
I can't believe that.
Right, and so they don't need to be arrested, they need to be
Help.
Right, help, that's right. So we want to, that's what diversion is. We divert them. Instead of a jail path, our police and our fire and rescue folks are trained to recognize, hey, this is somebody who could benefit from mental health treatment, and to bring that person to our Merrifield Center, which is our community services board, our mental health center, instead of bringing them to jail. And that's going to help a lot of people, and it's going to bring crime down, because a lot of what sometimes are called nuisance crime, neighborhood crimes, trespassing, disorderly conduct, these kinds of things, many times are the result of somebody who's having a mental health challenge. And so if we can get them treatment and get them on a path to self-sufficiency, it helps that person, and it also prevents those crimes from occurring. And it saves a lot of money. Do you know it costs $275 a day to have somebody in jail?
Unbelievable.
We can treat people for a fraction of that cost and actually help them get their lives back in order.
And that center is been improved, no? Recently, I visited that center. It looked beautiful. The facility is enormous.
It's a great facility. It's right up here off of Route 50, and not only is it a great building, but there are great people inside the building doing very good work, and we're getting better every day, and we're helping more people. We have already diverted really a couple thousand people into mental health treatment and out of our jail system. So that's a great accomplishment.
And I know the people that is so happy with you, because you really listen, and there's a lot of diversity in your community. And I think that is important, whatever you do for everybody.
Absolutely. You know, our broader country and our society is too divided right now. People need to get back to working together. And that means listening to people. It means listening to people who maybe have a different view. You know, we can all learn from each other. And when we work together, we can do great things. And we need to get back to thinking, okay, there's a challenge in front of us, an opportunity. Instead of how do I fight someone else and argue with somebody, it should be how can we work together.
Have you noticed any changes about this situation about the opioids?
Opioids is a huge problem, and of course now what we're seeing is just how much major drug companies were involved in this, intentionally pouring billions of pills into our communities, especially our poorer communities, taking advantage of people suffering from chronic pain, getting them hooked on opioids, leading to thousands and thousands of deaths. This is a major challenge.
And it's something that people is really not aware, and we have to just insist in that, especially kids in high school. Sometimes they steal the pills from the mother.
Right.
The addiction is terrible.
That's right. So we need to do a number of things. One is that encourage our doctors. You know, if you go, I had knee surgery a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I remember my doctor gave me a 30-day supply of pills. Well, I didn't need that. I needed 2 pills. I needed one for that night and one for the next day. So, and you're right. What happens, Laura, is people get the 30-day supply. They use it for a day or two, and then sometimes they sell it, they give it away, their kids take it, they trade it in school, then our kids get hooked, and once you get hooked on a legal prescription opioid, and it runs out and you can't get it anymore, you go onto the street, and what you get is heroin.
Heroin, that's the thing that people get heroin because they couldn't take and it's just the addiction is tremendous. I have a friend who died for opioid overdose.
Oh, it's so sad.
And it's just it's terrible because he began just with a broken bone, get addicted, and he just was overdosed. And in Merrifield, they train people precisely to the injection.
Right, we have our public safety personnel now have the right now. Now I'm drawing a blank, but you're right, naproxen, something like that.
So that teach the people, if in case you can just directly for the shots.
Right. So our fire and rescue department carries the shots with them. But that doesn't mean, hey, it's okay to use heroin, right?
No.
But it does mean that we're doing everything we can, and we're saving a lot of lives.
Because they're able to save a life because they have the shot immediately.
Right. If we can get to them in time, we can save them. But some people we don't get to in time. And then on top of that is is the fentanyl crisis, where
Oh, you're right.
some criminals are lacing heroin with fentanyl. Fentanyl is very dangerous.
Oh my goodness.
And if you think you're taking heroin, which is dangerous enough, and it's laced with fentanyl,
Mhm.
you could very well end up dead, and that's happening much too much.
Yeah, and so I just think that we have to educate the community, and we can like block it sometimes. The parents doesn't want to listen, and it's just a tremendous effort. So recently something happened about this situation about ICE, no, with the situation with the immigrants. You have any comments about it?
It's a more complicated issue than people realize.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Although the term illegal immigrant gets thrown around a lot, it's actually a civil violation to be in this country without proper documentation. On the other hand, if you commit a felony while you are an alien, a guest in our country, and you are deported because of that, and you re-enter the country, now that's a criminal violation. That distinction is important because under state law, our police are not allowed under state law to engage in civil enforcement. Police powers come from the state, and there's a specific statute that says that police do not have the authority to work on civil enforcement. But if somebody was deported because of a felony and came back in, that is a crime, and so the police can work on those. So that distinction becomes very important.
Is this important to clarify that?
It is, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, the general public doesn't always see that or hear that. So we do have a police policy that, quite frankly, has been around for over a decade, and it came out of that state statute. In fact, a attorney general opinion from the state, which made it very clear, and I've read the statute. The statute's very clear that police cannot engage in civil enforcement, and that's our county policy because the law requires it. But they do work and should work with our federal agencies on criminal enforcement. Sometimes, on the street, it's not clear whether it's a civil or a criminal case, and that's what happened. I think part of in this current incident was it turned out to be a civil incident. The police officer acted as if it was criminal, and that violated the police department's policy. But I think what's more important for citizens to realize is, going back to something you mentioned earlier, Laura, about our need to work together more.
Yes.
On this issue of immigration, we are fighting each other so much, instead of the community coming together, that there's so much misunderstanding. And we have to find a way as a country to come together and find some reasonable compromises.
Absolutely. One of the things, I'm running for school board, one of the things I tell people, by law, the kids inside the school, they're safe. Inside the school, we don't ask for it's legal, illegal. The kids are inside the school, every kid will be able to be taught.
And that's federal law.
It's
That's
federal
right.
law.
Yep.
So the people that listen to a lot of Hispanics that listen to us, and they have to understand, if something is happening in your neighborhood, you should call the police, because something, crimes is happening. You should not be afraid to call the police without, they will not ask you for your legal status.
That's right.
Something very clear. We have to, the police is really for everybody.
That's right. Our police department's rules are very clear that they do not engage in civil immigration enforcement because state law prohibits that, and we do want people in the community to feel comfortable talking to our officers. We need that because we do have gangs in this county. We do have violent crime. Thankfully not a lot, but it does happen. And the best defense against that is a good relationship between community members and the police. And trust comes from knowledge and understanding. And so we need to have that understanding out there. And that's why we have police policies to encourage our police and our community to work together. And this is a complicated area, but we do want people to feel comfortable talking to the police.
Yeah, and so we will have a little tiny break, and we come back in 1 minute. Time to wake up. Is any specific things
We talked about a lot of them already, so.
I know. Any other thing? Well, let's talk about why you experience, you live in a hole in this community, and so what are your plans for the living,
Yeah,
huh?
sure.
A little more about
Talk about the future.
the
Sure.
future, and we don't have Paul was running for Braddock, supervisor, Paul, the person who died, Paul.
No, that was Providence. So
Providence, oh,
it's,
you're right.
Jason Reamer, is the
Jason.
Republican
Okay.
in Braddock running against James Walkinshaw as the Democrat.
Okay. Are you supporting,
I supported Jason, he's our Republican nominee.
so could you say that maybe you can be kind of for him, something like that? Mentor him?
Yeah, I don't know how much you wanna get into an
No,
election
no.
politics.
Well, let's
already.
talk about yourself, okay? About you. So, one of the things I've noticed always that you always in the community. That is so unusual. Your wellness activities you with the community, and I like that.
Thank you, Laura. I really think that's a tremendously important part of the job is to be out in the community, because what we're supposed to be serving is the community, people in the
Yeah.
community. So much of local government has to do with people's everyday lives. It's not ideological. There's no, a conservative way to fill a pothole versus a liberal way. It's and so the only way you can really know what the community needs is to talk to people.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never viewed my job as, I've said publicly, I said, I'm not the king of the Braddock district. It's not my job to decide what my view is for how everybody's neighborhood ought to look. My job, I think, is to go out and give people knowledge and encourage them to become interested, knowledgeable, and then work with them to find the best answer for their community. And there might be one neighborhood where there's one answer, and in a different neighborhood they choose something else. We have this with things like traffic calming, where some neighborhoods want speed bumps and some don't. Well, I've never imposed a speed bump on any community.
Yeah.
But what I've told communities is if they want a speed bump, I'll get it for them.
Yeah.
And we have a process for doing that. So
Oh, wow.
people have to be involved and they have to make those decisions, and that's how it ought to be. So you gotta go out and you've gotta go to the civic association meetings and you go to the community events and the picnics and everything else, and you talk to people, and people will come up to me and say, hey, I've got an issue, I've got a problem, what do you think about this? And we talk. That's how it's supposed to work, Laura.
So something I noticed that you care about people, you care about women. You did a lot about domestic violence. Can you share with us?
Thanks so much for bringing that up. I really believe the family is the foundation of our society, and that means that if there's any place that we ought to all feel safe is at home.
Yeah.
Well, when we have violence in the home, then that really cuts at the heart of our families and therefore the foundation of our society.
Oh.
Domestic violence is a huge problem, and it's a problem that goes across racial lines, across economic lines, rich, poor, in the middle,
Everybody.
white, Hispanic, Asian, African American. There is domestic violence everywhere. It's important that we talk about it. It's important that people be aware of it. We want people to report it when it's happening. We want victims to understand that we're here to help. We want perpetrators who are doing this stuff to understand that it's wrong. We are going to punish them if they're doing the wrong thing. We will help them get back on the right track as well. We'll give them training and sometimes treatment and other things if they need it. And we have a new initiative, it's been about a year old, to really focus on our children and say, how can we as a community work together? Because in a home, and there is scientific research that tells us this, the biggest impact of domestic violence is not necessarily on the person who's getting beat up, it's on the kids who are witnessing it. And you don't even have to visually hear it. There's research showing that children as young as a few months old, a year old, they hear and they sense the violence that's happening in the home, and that has long-lasting, permanent effects on their ability to and we know that later on in life, people who have witnessed domestic violence, who have been the victim of domestic violence, they end up disproportionately being the victims of sexual assault and other crimes later on, because their resiliency has been harmed from the very start. So we really need to protect our children. It's a tremendously important issue.
Yeah, I remember my sister. You know, we never knew that nothing. She usually has boo-boos, no? Like oh, we just ignore it. You know what happened? If I I cried. And suddenly one time he said, I want to get divorced, and everybody was surprised because it was looking like it was a perfect marriage. And what happened? And he was beating him.
Oh no.
He was a police, and sometimes he was coming back and with anger, and he was beating her. And I was so in shock because, it was around 18 years of marriage, and I couldn't understand how you can stay in that. Later on, I understood that she told me that once you and be beaten, you kind of afraid to leave, and you just stay thinking that you deserve and things like that. But I think in domestic violence, I'm so happy that you're doing that. About this shelter, so they have these shelters around in Braddock, and I think it's important that people know that if you don't feel safe, you should call somebody.
Absolutely. If you're the victim of domestic violence, and Laura, you're absolutely right in what you said before, that and again, there's scientific research supporting this, that victims, it begins with often verbal abuse,
Yes.
other things, to the point that once the physical abuse is happening, people believe they can't leave, they believe it's their fault.
Yes.
It's not your fault if you're the victim of domestic violence, and you need to leave, and there is help. And if you leave and you call our county agencies, we can get you in a shelter usually that same day, so that you can help get your life back on track. It is difficult, and that's why we try to build awareness. And we say to people, if you think that a friend of yours, a family member, a coworker is a victim, you can call our county agencies and ask, how can you help?
Yeah.
People are worried. They're like, well, I don't know how to approach my friend. I don't want to embarrass her. Maybe I'm wrong. What do I look for? Ask us. We have a hotline. We have information. We have people that can help you figure out what's happening. Call, report it, and let our county experts help you help your friend or neighbor or loved one.
So that is very, very important. So it's almost coming out, the final hour show. It goes so fast. You can't believe it, actually. But I wanted to, give me 1 second. We need to close the door. I'm sorry, we have to take a little tiny break.
Post-production, and much more.
Here's your chance to put your voice and talent to use.
What are you waiting for? Your show could be the next big hit.
Pick up the phone and call us at 571-749-1102 or visit our website, www.fcac.org/orientation.
So, here in Mexico, some more domestic violence, and I'm so glad that I want to be clear with the people from a lot of Hispanic are listening to us, y voy a decirlo en español. Si ustedes tienen una necesidad, por favor comuníquense a los centros de la comunidad para que les ayuden cuando alguien les está golpeando. Well, I just thinking 10 years dedicated to the community, and you're leaving now. I can't believe that.
Well, I am, and thank you. It's been.
It's going to be a haul.
Well, thank you. It's been a great honor to serve. I'm still going to be around. It is a large time commitment, and it's also a significant financial commitment.
Yes.
And I have family, I have kids, and they're going through college, and I want to work on my finances. I want to spend some more time with my kids.
Yes.
I want to have some time to travel and do
Of
things.
course.
Regular people can say, hey, next Saturday, let's go to the mountains, or let's
Well,
take a
you're
trip.
right.
I can't do that because there's always 5 things on the calendar that I'm supposed to be doing. And so I think it's time for me to take a break, step back, spend some time on my law practice, spend some time with my family. I am still going to be involved in Diversion First as chair of our
that's great.
community stakeholders group. I'm still going to be involved in our domestic violence. I'm the chair of the Domestic Violence
Oh, thank you
Prevention
very much.
Council. And I'm still going to be an engaged citizen, but I won't be working as a day-to-day supervisor. It's somebody else's turn to do that. But you know, I think all of us should be engaged in our community.
Absolutely.
I believe in the citizen legislature approach, which is that you know, it's not necessarily a career, but you devote your time, and you come in and you serve, and then leave when you're out on top and doing well, and let someone else have a chance.
Absolutely. So just to closing, is any advice that you can tell the community? Well, you just told so many, but especially the young people, no? That, you know, I always wanted to leave something for the young people and the parents to listen to us, you know?
I think that's exactly right. I think people, we need to come together as a community. There's too much division in our society right now. People need to be engaged. Don't turn away from it, and don't always assume that somebody is wrong or bad and this fighting is too much. We need to come together. We have great opportunities to do great things. I believe that people can work together with their neighbors to make their neighborhood a better place to live. I believe our community is strong enough to come together to solve problems and to help people, whether it's mental health, whether it's safety in the community, whether it's domestic violence prevention, whether it's having good schools, better transportation. We have to work together, and we're not doing enough of that, and we can do better.
Well, thank you very much for these 10 years of dedication, and I'm sure you will be, but I thank you to guys continue getting involved, and well, thank you everybody to be here today, and we will wish you the best future.
Thank you very much, Laura. Fantastic.
Awesome. So I will edit the